Have you ever wondered why your mailman looks more carefully at certain houses? Why he pauses longer over some letters than others? For Bill Thompson, this wasn't just curiosity. This was the result of 20 years of military intelligence training. And that day, these skills would expose a spy ring operating right in his neighborhood. Welcome to Hidden Warriors. Before we tell you the story of the mailman who became a spy hunter, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us honor the guardians who protect us from threats hiding in plain sight. Maple Street looked like every other suburban neighborhood in America. Tree-lined sidewalks, well-maintained lawns, and families who waved from their porches. Bill Thompson had been delivering mail on this route for 15 years, and he knew every house, every family, every routine. At 62, Bill was the kind of mailman neighbors trusted, reliable, friendly, and always willing to help with a heavy package. But Bill moved differently than other postal workers. His eyes swept each property with systematic precision, noting changes in routine, unusual deliveries, and patterns that most people would never recognize. When he sorted mail at the beginning of each day, he didn't just organize by address. He unconsciously cataloged sender information, postmarks, and frequency patterns that his brain had been trained to detect decades earlier. The small apartment Bill called home was sparse, functional. A bed, a kitchen table, and a locked filing cabinet that contained documents most postal workers would never see. Inside that cabinet was a different life. Military intelligence credentials, commendations from operations that were still classified, and training certificates in counterintelligence techniques that had taken years to master. William Bill Thompson had been Chief Warrant Officer William Thompson, United States Army Military Intelligence. 20 years of hunting enemy agents, analyzing communication patterns, and identifying threats that hid behind civilian facades. From Cold War Berlin to post-9/11 counterterrorism operations, Bill had learned to see what others missed, to find patterns where others saw only randomness. When he retired in 2008, Bill wanted something quiet, something normal. Delivering mail seemed perfect, helping people, staying active, serving his community in a peaceful way. But some training never leaves you. Some skills become so ingrained that they operate below the level of conscious thought. October 27th, 2023, started like any other Friday. Bill loaded his truck with the day's mail and began his route at 8:30 a.m. sharp. The autumn weather was perfect, and most of his regulars were out getting their morning papers or walking their dogs. Everything seemed normal until he reached 47 Maple Street. The house belonged to Elena Petrov, a retired high school teacher who'd moved to the neighborhood 15 years ago. She was quiet, kept to herself, and received a modest amount of mail, mostly bills, catalogs, and what appeared to be correspondence from family overseas. Bill had delivered to her address thousands of times without giving it much thought. But that morning, as Bill sorted through Elena's mail, something triggered his pattern recognition instincts. It wasn't any single letter. It was the cumulative effect of 15 years of deliveries that suddenly didn't add up. Elena received international mail with unusual frequency for a retired teacher. The postmarks came from countries that didn't align with her supposed family background. And the timing of certain deliveries correlated with news events in ways that seemed more than coincidental. Bill stood at Elena's mailbox for a full minute, his mind automatically running through counterintelligence protocols he hadn't consciously thought about in 15 years. The letter in his hand bore a postmark from Prague, dated exactly 3 days after a NATO intelligence briefing had been leaked to the press. The sender's address was from a diplomatic quarter known to house several intelligence front operations. This was either an extraordinary coincidence, or Elena Petrov was not who she appeared to be. Bill finished his route that day, but his mind kept returning to 47 Maple Street. That evening, he did something he hadn't done since his Army days. He opened his filing cabinet and pulled out his old intelligence analysis notebooks. If Elena was operating as a foreign agent, there would be more patterns, more connections that a trained eye could detect. Over the next 2 weeks, Bill conducted his own surveillance operation. He varied his delivery times to observe Elena's routine, noted her visitors, and most importantly, analyzed every piece of mail that passed through her address. What he discovered confirmed his worst suspicions. Elena's mail network was sophisticated and carefully constructed. She received coded correspondence disguised as family letters, financial statements from accounts that generated unusual international transfers, and subscription materials to publications that served as dead drops for intelligence communication. Her visitors followed operational security protocols. Different people, different times, never staying long enough to attract attention. But Bill's most disturbing discovery came when he cross-referenced Elena's mail patterns with classified briefings he remembered from his Army service. The timing of her correspondence correlated with American military operations, defense contract awards, and NATO strategic planning cycles. Elena wasn't just receiving intelligence, she was part of a network that was actively compromising American national security. Bill faced a choice that every intelligence professional eventually confronts. He could report his suspicions through official channels, the FBI, Postal Inspection Service, Department of Homeland Security. But that would take time, require evidence, and involve bureaucrats who might not understand the urgency of the threat. Or he could do what he'd been trained to do for 20 years in the Army, gather actionable intelligence and neutralize the threat. Bill's investigation expanded to the entire neighborhood. Using techniques he'd learned in counterintelligence school, he began mapping the complete network. Elena wasn't operating alone. She was the central node in a spy ring that included at least 4 other residents on his route. The network was brilliantly designed. Dr. Marcus Webb, a retired aerospace engineer at 23 Maple Street, received technical journals that contained encoded defense specifications. Sarah Martinez, a freelance translator at 71 Oak Avenue, processed documents that appeared to be academic papers but contained military intelligence. James Park, who ran a small import business from his home office, facilitated the financial transactions that funded the operation. Each member of the network appeared to be exactly what they claimed to be: retired professionals, small business owners, ordinary Americans living quiet suburban lives. But Bill's trained eye could see the operational patterns that connected them: synchronized mail deliveries, coordinated absences from the neighborhood, and communication timing that followed classic espionage protocols. The most dangerous discovery was the scope of information being compromised. Based on the mail patterns Bill observed, this network had access to classified military technology, troop deployment schedules, and defense contractor research. They weren't just gathering intelligence, they were stealing secrets that could cost American lives. Bill spent 3 weeks documenting the network's operations, photographing mail patterns, recording visitor schedules, and building a comprehensive intelligence picture. Then he made the call he'd hoped never to make again. FBI Counterintelligence Division, how may I help you? This is retired Chief Warrant Officer William Thompson, Army Military Intelligence. I need to report a foreign intelligence operation in my neighborhood. The FBI meeting took place in a conference room that reminded Bill of every intelligence briefing he'd attended during his Army career. Same fluorescent lights, same maps on the walls, same weight of classified responsibility in the air. Special Agent Sarah Kim had reviewed Bill's file before the meeting. Mr. Thompson, your background is impressive, but we need to understand how a postal worker identified an operation our analysts missed. Bill spread postal records across the table alongside his intelligence analysis. Agent Kim, I've been delivering mail to these addresses for 15 years. When you understand communication patterns, you can see what others miss. The evidence was overwhelming. Bill had documented mail flows that revealed a sophisticated intelligence network, financial transfers that traced back to foreign government accounts, and operational security patterns that could only have been designed by professional intelligence officers. The central figure is Elena Petrov at 47 Maple Street, Bill continued. But she's running a 5-person network that's been operating in this neighborhood for over a decade. They're accessing classified military information, defense contractor specifications, and NATO strategic planning. Agent Kim studied the evidence for several minutes. If you're right about this, we're looking at one of the largest foreign intelligence operations on American soil since the Cold War. I am right, Bill said quietly. This is exactly the kind of network I spent 20 years hunting overseas. The only difference is now it's operating 3 blocks from where I live. The operation that followed was one of the most successful counterintelligence investigations in recent FBI history. Over the next 72 hours, federal agents arrested Elena Petrov and 4 co-conspirators. They seized encrypted communication equipment, classified documents, and financial records that revealed connections to intelligence services in 3 different countries. The spy ring had been operating for 12 years, stealing American military secrets and passing them to foreign governments. The damage to national security was extensive. Compromised weapons systems, exposed intelligence operations, and strategic plans that had been sold to the highest bidder. Bill Thompson's pattern recognition and intelligence analysis had uncovered what formal surveillance and electronic monitoring had missed. His Daily Mail route had given him access to communication patterns that revealed the network's true purpose. The FBI offered Bill a position as a consulting analyst. The Army wanted to bring him back for counterintelligence training. The Postal Service wanted to promote him to their inspection division. Bill declined them all. Why? Agent Kim asked during their final debriefing. You've proven you're still one of the best intelligence analysts in the country. Bill looked out the window of the federal building, down at the street where his mail truck was parked. Because 15 years ago, I learned that the best intelligence work happens when you're close enough to see patterns that others miss. Elena Petrov looked like a retired teacher because she wanted people to see exactly that. But a mailman sees the mail. Route 47 still gets delivered every day at 8:30 a.m. sharp. Bill still knows every house, every family, every routine. But now every postal worker in the country has been trained to recognize the patterns that Bill spotted. Unusual international mail, communication timing that correlates with news events, and correspondence networks that don't match the civilian lives they're supposed to represent. The neighborhood looks exactly the same. Tree-lined sidewalks, well-maintained lawns, families waving from their porches. But 47 Maple Street sits empty now, a reminder that enemies of America don't always look like enemies. Sometimes they look like neighbors. Bill Thompson went back to delivering mail because that's where he could serve his country best, not in a Pentagon briefing room or a CIA station overseas, but walking the streets of America, carrying letters and watching for the patterns that threaten the freedoms those letters represent. Because sometimes the most important intelligence work isn't done by satellites or supercomputers. Sometimes it's done by a man with a mailbag who remembers that vigilance is the price of liberty, and that patriots come in all uniforms, even the blue one worn by the United States Postal Service.